We've got some inside scoop on Wonder Woman 1984. Now, the digital purchase option is coming out, the Blu-ray is coming out, and we spoke with the local guy who had a huge part in the movie. Kelly, I learned, did you know what the director of photography does?
Uh,
And you can't say directs photography.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, well, I got to believe it has something to do with making the set look awesome, which it did in Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and it was one of the most beautiful, I think, shots, like the beautifully shot DC movies that we've ever seen. Matt Jensen had a lot to do with that because he is the director of photography for the movie. He also is an Alexandria native, and he talks about how his upbringing here in the area helped him for this movie. P.S. He also worked on Game of Thrones, so he has some questions about that. We talked about Commander Salamander and Gal Gadot and Patty Jensen, the director, and all of the things that went into making Wonder Woman 1984 the movie that it was. So let's check out the conversation with Matt Jensen, the director of photography for Wonder Woman. So Matthew, welcome to the show. I guess welcome back home. You're from the area, from Northern Virginia. What was your upbringing in the DC area like, and how did you get inspired to become a filmmaker and to get into cinematography?
Well, thanks, Tommy. It's a pleasure to be here. I was really happy to come home to shoot Wonder Woman. So that was a fantastic thing. My formative years were in the Northern Virginia area, Alexandria and Fairfax, really from ages 6 to 16. And it's where I fell in love with the movies, where I can, trace back and remember exactly where I saw certain movies at certain theaters around the area. I was very fortunate that I was part of the Smithsonian, and the Smithsonian at the time offered a lot of opportunities for kids to take film classes and provided a lot of inspiration and know-how, and sort of gave me the confidence to try this hand at filmmaking for a career, and to pursue it at school. So DC had a lot of resources and opportunities.
So were you in like a Smithsonian summer camp class thing, and is that when you realized I want to do this for real?
Yeah, there was a program, and I think it's still running. It was called the Young Associates program, and they had fall classes, and then they had summer camps where you would make a movie. It was kind of a big deal for me. In 1984, actually, I was 12 years old and would ride the metro in from Northern Virginia and do it by myself. It was a huge moment for me. And I'd get off at L'Enfant Plaza and walk to the Smithsonian and spend, summers in the basement of the Natural History Museum.
So how much of all the details, because Wonder Woman 1984 was, I think, like the most beautiful cinematic love letter to Washington. Like everything, like the city just looked gorgeous, even when you tore up the Watergate. Spoiler alert. But was every single shot of that you and your team? Did you look at it from that lens of having been here?
I certainly did. And, our production designer is French and our set decorator is English. So they didn't know the DC area in the ways that Patty and I did. So we were constantly nudging them to say, hey, look over here. There's that great building, or there's that opportunity for, 80s colors and day glow and, that sort of thing. I think my biggest contribution to the production design was telling them that they had to put time out in the arcade in the mall. And then they did all the research and actually recreated the exact design of it, and, that sort of thing. So there were a lot of those kinds of examples where we were nudging them in a certain direction.
Well, and you probably weren't in town when this happened, but when news broke that Commander Salamander was coming back, oh my goodness, the city was vibrating, and then everyone realized like, oh, it was only for Wonder Woman. But how are you involved in bringing back that concept of Commander Salamander? Because you didn't have to have that in there. You could have just been like generic punk store. It was really cool that you resurrected that.
Well, that came up on our first scout, which was, I think, January of 2018. And our location rep and Patty were talking about Commander Salamander. We were walking up and down Wisconsin Avenue. And when they said Commander Salamander, my eyes just like, got bugged out of my head, because that was such an iconic place. And it was so meaningful for me because I went to middle school just not too far from there. And I remember all the cool girls used to walk, towards Commander. Where are you guys going after school? We're all going to Commander Salamander to get sunglasses. And at that moment when that idea came up, I was like, Patty, we have to do this. We have to do this. And we were lucky enough to do it on Wisconsin, not in the original location, but a couple blocks up. So that was amazing.
We were doing our show when you were filming, and there was this moment that one of our viewers sent to us on her phone where this little girl in a Wonder Woman outfit was like watching the filming, and Patty saw her and like came over and like took her under the ropes and like showed her around the set and everything. And it was so cool because a lot of times when productions come to DC, they're very closed off. You can't get near the star, like none of that. But it felt like Wonder Woman was here filming for so long that and maybe that's because of your connection or Patty's, but really became part of the neighborhoods and part of the city while you were here. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, I'm glad. I think that Patty always wants to be respectful of the places that we go and shoot. I mean, a film production can be so invasive and inconvenient to regular life. And, at the time we were kind of coming off of the success of the first one. And I think that both Gal and Patty felt that Wonder Woman was a great ambassador for love and understanding and compassion, and wanted to display that in the production.
So if people aren't like dialed into the film world, what exactly does a director of photography do?
Well, director of photography or cinematographer, essentially, we are the right hand to the director, and we assist them in telling the story visually. So, and the way I do that is through camera and lighting, and those are my primary responsibilities. So the look of the movie is my responsibility, and so that requires that I work with a lot of different departments to achieve that. I primarily achieve it through lighting. And the shot design, but I work with the production designer. I work with the visual effects team. I work with everybody to make sure that everything that goes in front of the camera has a certain look and feel.
So how do you work on a project? To get a side note for a second, like you've done Game of Thrones and you've worked on Mandalorian, and you've done a couple episodes in a season. How does the production stay consistent throughout if you have different directors of cinematography like on certain episodes?
Yeah, well, I think in both the cases of Game of Thrones and The Mandalorian, the shows are so ambitious and have such a huge scope and scale that one cinematographer could not do all the episodes. There's so many locations, there's so many visual effects, and it requires a lot of prep. And normally on a TV series, you don't get that because you're just cranking out episode after episode. So it really requires a trust in the other person and a cohesive vision from the showrunners or creators, and then just a lot of back and forth between the other cinematographers about how you're achieving the looks. And in both the cases of The Mandalorian and Game of Thrones, I was very lucky to be paired with incredibly talented cinematographers who are also great people and understanding and communicative. So it worked out pretty well that we were able to kind of borrow from one another.
There was a great moment on the red carpet in D.C. when Julia Louis-Dreyfus was receiving the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor. And she was coming down the red carpet. I got to interview her, and I asked her, because she's from D.C., she went to Holton Arms, her influences. And she talked about Judy White, who was her drama teacher at Holton Arms. And Judy eventually heard about that, and it made her day. So I would love for you to tell us who your inspirations have been growing up here. Maybe it was someone who was, involved in the Smithsonian or someone at school. Give some shout outs, give some love in the Wonder Woman vibe, right? I feel like she would want you to do that.
Absolutely. Well, the Phil Baradelli, who taught the Smithsonian classes that I took, was instrumental in my understanding of film and film language and how films communicate ideas and move their stories along. He, more than anybody, really inspired me the confidence to pursue a career. Phil used to run a show called The Movie Going Family, which was on cable in Northern Virginia. He lived in McLean, and he used to review movies on cable access, basically. And then he also taught these classes at the Smithsonian and a couple of I think local high schools and things like that. Phil was fantastic.
On filming Wonder Woman 1984, which, by the way, you can get the new release of it and all the other goodies that are out. The shot when Gal and Chris are walking by the reflecting pool, by the Lincoln, and it's all lit up. Was that your magic? Was that a little green screen movie magic? Because I have never seen the reflecting pool and just that area look so beautiful.
Well, thank you very much. It was all shot on location. Yeah, that actually, I was always very nervous about that scene, mainly because we couldn't light it up to the extent that I wanted to. Just there were so many regulations about what we could and couldn't do. So I we shot primarily on film for Wonder Woman, but that sequence I shot on digital, just so I could work at very low light levels. And I wanted the Washington Monument to be very prominent in the background. And I couldn't set up all these lights all over. So I basically followed Chris and Gal with a huge glam photo shoot light, and moved it with them. And so essentially they're lit up. The Washington Monument is lit up. We were able to use the existing lighting in the Lincoln Memorial the other way. And then I just allowed everything pretty much to go black beyond that. And I think that gave the quality that you're talking about.
One final question as we go, because DC, we've had a lot of movies, a lot of TV, a lot of things shot here, and sometimes they don't get it right, a la Angelina Jolie going to the Georgetown Metro Station. Were there any things that you and the team caught along the way and you're like, no, that's not a DC thing, we can't do that? Because it feels, and I feel like I've looked through it pretty with a pretty tight eye, that it seems pretty accurate on all fronts.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very proud of that. I think when we were scouting, both Patty and I were like, yeah, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. No, there's no way. That never happened. There are a few details that I think we missed when they go down in the metro. While we were able to get a period train, and that was really important to us. That shows up and, Chris is sort of mystified by and amazed by. There are a couple signs for the Silver Line and things that weren't around.
Yes, I saw that. That's right.
And when we were shooting, I saw it and I was like, make a note, got to talk to visual effects. They'll paint it out, but we never quite followed through there. So there are a couple mistakes like that I think people will catch, but for the most part, we try to be, I think it's just because Patty and I knew the area. We just didn't steer in the direction of being false.
Matt Jensen, thank you for your time. I appreciate the conversation, and thanks for just showing DC so beautifully. And congrats on being part of the first Wonder Woman, the second Wonder Woman, and my goodness, your IMDb is insane. All the things you've been doing and showing us through screens. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Tommy. Thanks for having me.